Shadowland. They've got fire, they've got style, they make chaos look worthwhile. Partners in crime, heartbeats aligned, together they're one of a kind. They're the couple that slays together, storming the world, it's now or never. Back to back, through thick and thin, in the game of life they always win. Blazing trails, leaving legends behind. Love so fierce, it's one of a kind. We're the couple that slays together. Oh.
Hi, and welcome to The Couple That Slays Together. I'm Katie.
Hey, and I'm Brandon. Welcome back to our show, guys. Really appreciate you guys watching so far. Man, we've had a blast doing this.
We're up to this many.
Yeah, this many. We're a whole handful.
We're a whole handful now.
Well, I guess plus one because we have our 0 episode. So I guess you get.
Hey, yeah.
Yeah. So
we're more than one hand.
yeah. Man. So we have finally gotten to Scream. This was both of our first horror movies.
Yep.
As
we've stated before, he's a 1986, late 1986. I'm an early 1987. So we're very close in age and have some similar experiences. And our first horror movie that we saw, separately, we didn't know each other at the time, was Scream.
Of course, we grew up on things like Goosebumps and, the kid horror movies, which we will actually be reviewing some kid horror movies too. That's definitely one of our subgenres. Hocus Pocus, Casper, Halloween Town.
Erie, Indiana.
I don't know if we'll do that.
I know. It was just one of the ones I grew up with.
Yeah, I'd be down for it.
Scary Stories Tell in the Dark.
Yeah, I mean.
Are You Afraid of the Dark? Yeah, well, yeah. Well, no wonder millennials like horror.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. We were kind of born into it, if you will.
I will say this though. I think I read the story of the girl with the green ribbon way too young. Did you read that?
No.
It's a short book. It's labeled as a kid's book, but it's a little girl and you don't know why she's wearing a green ribbon around her neck. And at the end of the story, she pulls the green ribbon from around her neck and her head falls off.
Interesting. I remember one of the most distinct Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes I remember was the Tia and Tamara episode where one of them's a chameleon. And at the end, you think that she washes the good sister down, or the bad sister down, but it's really the bad sister that washes the good sister.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've seen that, but it's like triggering like a deep memory there.
Yeah. Well, we are all decked out in our Scream outfits. I'm wearing some Ghostface pajama pants. Finally dressing comfortably on the show. I guess that's an excuse to dress comfortably. I'm normally in jeans, but we're both rocking Spookala shirts. Love Spookala down there in Tampa, Florida. They're a great con. Shout out to Deej and all the guests he's been able to bring. He brought a lot of my first time introductions to killers of the franchise. I've met 10 out of 13 of them. I count Jason from part 6. He is a killer to me. So all you out there haters, you can disagree with me all you want, but you're wrong. No, but
it checks all the boxes, right?
Yeah. So, gosh, I know we talked about it on, the news a couple episodes now, but sounds like for Scream 7, we're going to get Matthew Lillard back. Scott, we'll talk about it, but obviously he's one of the killers from the first one, Stu. And then we're getting my favorite killer back, Roman Bridger, from Scream 3. I'm so excited for that. I
saw a really funny meme, and it was a photo of the swing set. That's outside of Casey's house at the very beginning, and it says confirmed to be in
final talks. I did see the semi. That's funny.
I think that's a really funny one. I may share that on our group.
That is funny. And it's interesting. I saw the theory, and I shared it with you, I believe, that more killers might come back for this, but the killer might be using AI, which I thought was interesting because when they were coming out with Scream 5 or Scream 2022 or Scream 5, however you want to address it, when they were coming out with the fifth and sixth installments of this franchise, I thought it was interesting because it's like we are in such a text heavy society now. And I'm just like, how are they going to do it?
Can
And
you imagine Ghostface texting you though, like
right.
like a knife emoji and like
Yeah.
gonna get you?
Well, and we saw it in the beginning of Scream 2022, she ignores the landline call for a little
Yep.
bit. She's texting her friend who does happen to be the killer.
It does.
Spoilers.
Okay.
But it's
Well,
interesting.
and in 7,
Right.
Samara Weaving kind of texts.
6, you mean?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Edit that. Scream 6. Samara Weaving is texting first before getting the phone call about the fake date and not knowing where he's
Yep.
at and everything.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. So, but we obviously see that phone calls still work in the films. So I think and I know there's this big hoopla on whether or not we should be embracing AI. I know I have, and I know there are people out there who are going to be like, oh my gosh, he likes AI, blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, I do, but at the same time, it's for me as a graphic designer, it's helped improve my job significantly. The way I explain it to people is it's meant to take you from a screwdriver to a drill. It's not meant to
Right.
replace the carpenter. I know people will disagree with me and tack on an extra saying of against that, but that's how I look at AI, and it definitely has helped improve and help automate some things about my job. But at the end of the day, I'm still the one clicking the buttons. So
Yeah, I see both sides of the argument. And I do agree with you that, certain sci-fi movies have really put, the seed of being afraid of technology and then putting fertilizer on it and watering it and really getting into the deep fear of, well, one day these robots are going to rise up and either take all of our jobs, or, unalive, kill all of us. I like AI. Some of it is funny because, like, the hands never come out right and things
Yep.
like that. So sometimes kind of funny. But I did read that when Prince was alive, the musician Prince, he specifically stated that he never wanted to have his hologram, his likeness used like that. And I can appreciate that and understand that it can still be kind of creepy. And I if that is the route that Scream's going to take, obviously they're going to make it creepy, right? Of an AI doing
right. Well, and to
taunting.
flip the script on you there, James Earl Jones, right before he passed away, it was mere months, signed over his rights to let the Star Wars franchise use the Darth Vader voice to continue on in the legacy, to use Darth Vader. I for one can appreciate that, because in the end of the day, at the end of our lives, we can't take it with us. So why not let someone enjoy our legacy? How many things are we still watching of Lucille Ball or what was Dorothy's real name? Help me. Wizard of Oz.
Judy Garland.
Yes, Judy Garland. I mean, there are still things that we enjoy about these actors and actresses who have passed on that have left legendary IPs, left the legendary characters. Why not? I feel like it actually helps keep everything together. It helps younger generations appreciate it even more
If it's
because
done right.
yeah,
If it's done right. If it's done respectfully.
sure,
Yeah. If it's put in the hands of the wrong person who's doing it, I've seen people doing inappropriate things,
Yeah.
and things like that online. I think if it's an official character living on through a franchise, done respectfully, that's fine. If you're disrespecting it, if you're making, a mockery of, then you probably should just leave AI alone.
Yeah.
I also think that, there's been several issues with AI where you're scrolling and you're seeing a news story,
Oh, yeah.
right? And it's, oh my gosh, something's blown up, or oh my gosh, this person's done this. And then you see this little, like, created by AI or computer generated.
Yeah, fake.
That-
I hate to
that
use the term
needs to be
fake
more
news, but
regulated.
it's definitely fake news. I mean,
Yeah.
you see the Palisades fires.
Right.
Shout out to anyone who's going through that. That's awful. I know that they someone they created a perfectly generated AI image of the Hollywood sign burning down when the fires weren't taking effect on it
Exactly.
at all.
And then it's detrimental too, because what stories are true, what stories aren't true, how many people then are seeing maybe a true story and going, oh, that's not
Right.
real, I'm not really going to send aid, or I'm not really going to help out. I mean, there's just a lot of ethics and morality, I think, in it.
Yep.
And personally, I think a tiny little tag of saying this is AI generated
Yep.
is not enough for a lot of people. You know, not everyone's tech savvy of all ages, but you have an older generation that can be easily scammed and
Yep.
things like that. So I think that, to your point, AI is a tool, but it needs to be in the hands of people that are going to use
Right.
that tool properly.
Where I get annoyed with AI is when people will make these perfectly generated posters, like fan posters, or
And you get new movies coming.
yeah, a new movie or a new series is coming, and it's like they make it look like such a real announcement, and it's like, no, it's not. It's not even in the works.
I
Or
hope you vet that for me. I don't know how many times I'll send things to Brandon and be like, "Think this is real or not?" He'll
you won't even say that.
actually no.
You'll just send it to me, and I'll be like, fake,
Like,
already
well,
debunked.
initially I would say, "Is this real?" or whatever.
Yeah,
And there are a few times where I'm just like, I'm just send it to him and he'll tell me.
sure.
And then there's a lot of times where you're like, "Yeah, I heard about that 6 months ago. Where you been?"
Yep. Well, hey, let's get into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna go all the way back to the beginning, 1996. We're gonna talk about Scream 1996, the original Scream film. Our horror genre for this, I have this. This is obviously a slasher. It is definitely a teen movie, as teens are getting butchered like crazy. Definitely a comedy. Not necessarily a horror comedy like say Scary Movie or something like that, but it's definitely got a lot of comedic elements to this.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't check that, but I do agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also put psychological. There is that, like, I want to taunt and play with you on the
Yeah,
phone
well-
beforehand. And then once again, we have the abuse/revenge. I chose revenge.
Yep.
You don't know it until, act 3 and everything, but this is a revenge story. There is a reason why Sydney is the main target. Yeah, that's what I have as well. You put suspense, right? I put suspense and thriller.
No, I didn't put those.
I did, because I think that it does build up, and it's part of that psychological, I think.
Yeah.
It starts with the ringing of the phone.
Yeah.
You don't have any background. It's just the phone's ringing. Casey's picking it up. It's
Yeah.
an immediate,
Well,
I'm going to mess with you.
you also got to put this, and we actually added 2 new categories in recent mystery and anthology.
Mhm.
Obviously, it's not an anthology because it's not different ones, but it's definitely part of a mystery because it's a whodunit. You know who's doing it.
Mhm.
I would probably scale back a little bit on things like abuse and revenge, because when I think of a abuse revenge movie, I'm thinking Last House on the Left or I Spit on Your Grave.
Well, and I'm thinking that revenge isn't always abuse and abuse isn't always revenge.
Sure.
But I think in Stu's case, it's not, right? He's just psychotic. But in Billy's case, it's 100% revenge.
Sure, that's fair. This film was written by Kevin Williamson and directed by the late and great Wes Craven. The father of Nightmare on Elm Street. So many other IPs. This film stars Neve Campbell as Sidney Prescott, Courtney Cox as Gail Weathers, David Arquette as Dewey Riley, Jamie Kennedy as Randy Meeks, Skeet Ulrich as Billy Loomis, Matthew Lillard as Stu Mocker, Rose McGowan as Tatum Riley, W. Earl Brown as Kenny the Cameraman, Joseph Whipp as Sheriff Burke, who we talked about. He was the police officer in A Nightmare on Elm Street, so that's pretty cool to see him back in another one of Wes Craven's projects. We have Roger Jackson as the voice of Ghostface, who continues on in the entire franchise as the voice, and also voiced the Ghostface killer in the season 3 of the series, the TV series. We also have a beginning. I don't like the word cameo because she's in a full scene, but we have Drew Barrymore as Casey Becker, and finally we have Henry Winkler as Principal Henry. And we'll talk about some interesting things of note with him later. Our mini plot summary of this is: a year after the murder of her mother, Sidney Prescott is terrorized by a masked killer who targets her and her friends by using scary movies as part of a deadly game. The film opens with a phone call. Literally, the film opens with a phone call. It's ringing. It's a nighttime in a secluded house. High school student Casey Becker, played by Drew Barrymore, is home alone making popcorn. When Casey receives a phone call from an unidentified man, the conversation begins playfully but turns sinister as the caller reveals he's watching her. The caller forces Casey into a twisted horror movie trivia game to save her boyfriend, Steve, who is tied up outside. When Casey answers incorrectly, Steve is killed. I remember watching that as a kid. Again, this was my first horror movie. I was a little bit that, it's funny because you when you watch things like horror related, or it's like when you're getting into a new territory of life to where you haven't experienced that yet. I just remember seeing his pile of guts in his stomach, and I was like, that was the glass breaking moment for me. Like that was like a bit of a traumatizing shock, but not in like a bad way to the point where I'm A, scared, hiding under the bed all the time, or B, wanting to kill somebody.
Yeah.
It's just, seeing that kind of thing on film for the first time, that was very earth shattering for me.
And very anatomically correct, right?
Yeah.
We just talked about Friday the 13th.
Yep.
Or I'm sorry, Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yep.
With Johnny Depp and the amount of blood and how that's
Sure.
it's crazy, but it's not anatomically correct.
Right.
This scene felt like
Yeah.
this was truly what it would look like if that happened to someone.
If I could describe a feeling, I don't think I actually did this, but if I could describe a feeling, if you're watching on YouTube, I was just like, and then I continued on, so.
The definition of jaw drop.
Yeah. Next up, we see Ghostface wearing the iconic mask and robe, and he chases Casey through the house and the yard. She fights back, but is ultimately caught, stabbed, and strangled. Casey's parents return home to find her hanging from a tree, gutted. Her murder sets up the tone for the film's blend of horror and satire.
And I think you need to be a little bit more descriptive with that. She wasn't just gutted; things were hanging out of her. And that particular opening scene, the hey, we're not finished yet.
Hey, we're not finished yet.
When we've got that, and then what's your favorite scary movie and things like that. And there's a lot of setup and a lot of detail in just this opening scene.
Yep.
And I think for a lot of audiences, you're thinking, well, Drew Barrymore, she's A-list, been around since she was a child. She's already gone? Holy crap, what am I in for?
Right.
I think another part that I love that adds to the creepiness and the setup of this is that her parents can hear her on the other line.
Yeah.
And can hear that she's going, Mom?
Yeah.
That just went through me as well.
Oh, yeah. We then see Sidney Prescott at home and then later at school. Sidney is introduced as a quiet protagonist, and throughout high school, she is dealing with the trauma of her mother's murder. Her boyfriend, Billy Loomis, so she's at home. We see that she's just kind of by herself on the computer. Dad comes in saying, "Hey, I'm taking off for the weekend, probably going to a conference." They never really explain where he's going.
And that was a question I had too, was he says that he's going to be at I think it's the Hilton down by the airport.
Yeah.
Is that the airport that's close to Woodsboro, or is that the airport at his destination and he's supposed to be
right
wherever? I think it's another one of those, this is a teen movie and the parents don't really we just have to have a way to have the dad not around so that she can be stalked.
Yep. But just a couple minutes prior to this, her boyfriend Billy Loomis sneaks into her room, and after her dad leaves her alone, and she realizes he's gone. They're sitting there talking, and he's saying, "Oh, The Exorcist was on. Maybe think of you somehow because the
good parts were edited for TV.
Yeah, because The Exorcist really makes me think about sex. But anyway, he pressures her for intimacy, and they begin to make out. But ultimately, she says no, and when he pressures her and she says no, that definitely symbolizes her struggle with trust and vulnerability. Okay, so then we cut to Sydney arriving at school the next day for school. She obviously goes to Woodsboro High School. News of Casey and Steve's murders are being spread, causing panic. The school becomes an epicenter of fear and gossip. Gail Weathers, an ambitious and cutthroat reporter, arrives in town to cover the case. It's interesting because you see in the beginning of this, the kids are at school. They're getting interrogated by, the teachers and the principal. definitely a lot of drama there. Go
It's
ahead.
also letting the audience kind of in on what's happened off camera.
Yep.
Because when we're introduced to Sydney, we don't know that her mom is gone. We just know the dad's leaving.
Right.
And then this is a setup of who Sydney is, what she's already been through, the fact that she already knows who Gail is. There's a lot of narration in these scenes to let you know what the backstory is.
Yep. The next night, we see Sydney alone at home. Sydney receives a threatening phone call similar to Casey's. She's so she's staying at Tatum's that night, her friend Tatum, and she's waiting for Tatum to pick her up. So while Tatum's gone, she's taking a nap. Wakes up to Tatum giving her a call.
And wherever this is shot is beautiful.
Yeah, that
this
house
valley
is insane.
This house on top of this valley with these views, I'm like, I would just be on that back porch all the time.
Yeah. But it's like crazy because it's like there's levels to it. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, how big is this
And
house?
it's not even like a tri-level per se.
Right.
It's different. But I immediately, my millennial self too, saw her boombox, and I'm like, I used to have a boombox like
Yep.
that.
Creed poster.
Yeah, the Creed poster, all that stuff. But it's just a beautiful location of this, Northern California.
Yep.
I'd say Napa Valley. I don't know that that's true, but this valley.
Yeah. It is Northern California.
Yeah, it's definitely Northern California. It makes you wonder, what does her dad actually do?
Right.
How they afford this is
Right. It makes me wonder if like they got some crazy insurance money from like the mom passing away or something. I don't know.
Who knows?
It's very similar to like the Home Alone. Like, how do they have this big, huge house?
Yeah. The other thing that I thought while seeing this scene was justice for Randy. Like, so many people think it's Randy playing with them at first, there's during this scene she is calling his bluff, and she sticks her finger up her nose and, do you see, you sure you can see me and everything? And, gigs up Randy,
Yep.
tell Tatum to hurry up. Poor Randy.
Yep.
He's an innocent and goofy kid, and he gets kind of assumed to be this prankster who's not really a prankster, who's a killer.
Yep. But at the end of the phone call, he says, if you hang up on me, you'll die just like your mother.
Just like your mother. Yep.
As she hangs up the phone, Ghostface attacks her, but she narrowly escapes by locking herself in her bedroom and dialing 911 from her computer, which I did not know was possible at that time, but
Yeah.
there you go.
Well, and this is another, to me, this is another example of how this is a comedy.
Yeah.
It's a dark comedy, but it's a comedy because she literally just told the killer that she doesn't like scary movies because it's always some big-breasted, stupid woman that's running up the stairs instead of going out the front door. It's insulting, right?
And then
What does she do?
Yep.
Now, granted, to her defense, the front door is kind of blocked.
Yep.
But she didn't go running to the back door.
Yeah.
She went right up the stairs to her bedroom.
Sure.
Now, how ingenious is it, though, to know I can't use this phone and immediately go and get on your computer?
Yep.
And for the time, use new technology to dial in to get help.
Yep. Moments after, actually seconds after Sydney dials 911, Billy arrives moments later, appearing suspicious as he drops his cell phone. The police arrest him as a possible suspect.
Mm-hmm.
We are then taken to the police station, Woodsboro Police Station. At the police station, Billy denies being the killer. Meanwhile, Sydney struggles to process her near-death experience.
I think we skipped. Did we skip the scene where they're sitting around the fountain
Yes.
at school?
Yep.
That's a really important scene in my opinion.
Yep.
Because at that point, the audience, we don't know if it's one person, two people, five people. We have no idea. But they put in a little Easter egg.
Yeah.
Where our two killers are the only two people that are wearing those dark boots.
Well, not only that, but, and again, this won't reflect on my grading system, which will show a little bias probably between us both.
Yeah.
But the way that they speak to each other, I feel like this happens in a lot of movies.
No one said you did.
Yeah, no one said you did. Like,
Yeah.
come on, man. Like,
Yeah. And a side story about me, when I was younger, this was like the go-to movie that me and one of my best friends would always kind of put on the VHS. I probably wore out that copy. But we would always bring back up and quote, "The liver alone."
Yeah.
And my best friend's mom that would be a trigger for her. And she'd go, "Stop it! This could really happen. People really do these things." So for me, this scene it's strangely, oddly, the horror fan in me loving that scene.
Yep. Outside the police station, Gail confronts Sydney, Tatum, and Dewey, I believe, is out there too, right? No, he's not.
Dewey is trying to get them. He's escorting.
Yep.
This is also where we learn that Dewey and Tatum are brother and sister.
Yes.
And that her older brother is the deputy.
Yep.
And then he has decided that, obviously, you're staying with my sister tonight already.
Yep.
I'm going to escort you guys, get you guys home. So he's getting them out of the police station.
And
where
Gail
she's bombarded.
Yes, Gail confronts them, suggesting that Cotton Weary, the man convicted of her mother's murder, might be innocent. Sydney punches Gail in the face, showcasing her resilience and cooperation.
Boom, bitch went down.
Yeah. We later see Sydney and Tatum back home at Tatum's house, where Sydney receives a phone call from the killer, making it seem like Billy
It couldn't
was
possibly
not
be
the
Billy.
killer because he was in jail.
And I think that this scene is a really cool showing of their friendship. Tatum's a little bit more outgoing and vocal.
Yep.
Sydney's a little bit more reserved and processing her thoughts on the events.
Yep.
And it seems minor, and it is kind of minor, but it's just kind of that, like, the girl friendship, girl-teen friendship here, that you'll see more of Tatum's personality later, but it's a good foundation.
Yep. So we then next see Principal Henry, played by Henry Winkler, in the school, reprimanding students wearing ghost face masks, heightening the tension. Later, he is
Intensely.
Oh yeah,
He's a very intense principal.
yeah. It's interesting because they're in the school. Obviously, we see Sydney run into Billy, and they're talking about how the killer called her later that night, and he said, "I couldn't do it. I couldn't have been me. I was in jail." So we then see Sydney in going to the bathroom. She's in the bathroom.
Kind of needing a moment of peace.
Yeah.
A moment of just not having people around me. And as a person with anxiety, I can completely understand that. Like, I just need the noise and the conversations and the opinions to stop.
But obviously she
Poor
hears,
Sydney, it doesn't.
Yeah. But obviously she hears the two women outside the restroom saying she thinks that she did it. Went nuts because her mom died. Pretty brutal. Their conversation.
Yeah. In today's terms, those women would have been putting this on the internet and called trolls.
Right. So I want to ask you this because I have my own opinions on this. We then see her looking at herself in the mirror after the girls are gone. And then we see 2 feet step down from that toilet. And then Ghostface come down. She hears the whisper of Sid. And then, she suspects, it could be a killer. So she starts to run and the Ghostface attacks her. Do you think that was actually one of the killers or do you think it was a prank?
I think it was one of the killers.
Interesting, because I think it was a prank. And here's, let me hear why you think it was one of the killers.
I think it was one of the killers because at this point in time, other teenagers know about the robe, right? But they don't know about the boots.
Yep.
And if it was like tennis shoes that stepped down or whatever, not the darker jeans and the black boots.
Yep.
And the fact that, it wasn't that much of a attack, right? She slides underneath him, she gets away.
Yeah.
There's no further chasing. But you also have to think, if that killer chased her more, you had a way higher chance of being caught by another student, a teacher, yada yada. I think it was an attempt, and that it was a true attempt on a killer. My question with it is, if they had been successful either in this attack or the attack the night before in her house, would they ever have explained the connection at the end? So I think it's probably one of the real killers, but probably not a full on, I actually want to kill her here.
Yep.
I want to mess with her.
Yep.
That's my opinion.
Yeah.
But you think it was probably a prank by someone else.
I say it's a prank. Now, I do see the argument for it being, a real, like one of the actual killers. The reason why I think it was a prank is because how that scene flowed. They were talking a lot about how there are people running around doing pranks. There was that guy running through the hallway, like running around with the Ghostface costume on. And then when the killer actually attacks her, now, I mean, those were popular boots back in the day too. I know in a high school, and now I know I was a little bit of a freak, but I wore the Sketcher boot shoes, and I know he was wearing actual boots, but I wore the boot shoes. I liked the boot shoes. They were comfortable. They were sturdy. I worked a lot of, restaurant and retail jobs. So those boots I just wore because out of comfort, A. B, when he attacks her in the bathroom, he doesn't have a knife or any weapon. Now, you could say that maybe it's...
I thought he did.
Nope, it was just him. So it makes me wonder, he doesn't have a knife, he doesn't have anything to kill her with, it's either in his pocket, we don't see it, but if it was a killer, how was he going to kill her without any weapons? Was he just going to strangle her to death? Was he just going to do it right there at the school? I mean, obviously because plot / suspend belief, but for me, and again, the way that scene flowed right after that happened, it shows the news report showing lots of, pranks are being played here in the school, and this is the actual suit that the whatever killer wears, or, the Father Death costume they show. So that's why that's why I think it's a prank. Yeah. Now it could, I'm not against it. If it were the true, killer, then fine.
It would have to have been Stu, right? Because she just talked to Billy.
Maybe. I mean, he could have gone off, though, and put that suit. Well, yeah, I guess you're right, because she did run to the bathroom, so I guess it would have had to have been Stu.
I think it would have had to have been Stu. It could very well have been I'm going to attack her and, I don't know, kidnap her for Billy, or who knows what their other, contingency plans were. But I would say this just to counter you. If it was a prank by just some other random student.
Yep.
It's odd that Sydney would be their target.
Right.
You would think that if it was, some kind of fake out prank, that they would be, going after the other two girls that just left. The person waits for them to leave and then focuses when Sydney's by herself.
Well, it's weird that there's even a person in there waiting, because it's like, how do they know that it's Sydney in the bathroom? How do they know that all these things are going on? It's weird that they even would do that. Like you almost kind of think it's just a peeping Tom in the bathroom, like maybe jerking off to the girls that are in there. But at the same time, he has a suit. So it's like, well, what's he doing? What's his motive? I will say this, whether it's a prank or a one of the killers, and this isn't a deal breaker by any means. I don't knock any points off of it for this. It doesn't make sense that somebody's in there. It kind of doesn't, because you can't say one of the killers snuck in there after her, because she was already in the restroom and the two girls were at the mirror. So it's not like he could have snuck in there without the girls seeing him, unless it were two girls, unless they were just so vain they didn't see somebody do it, and it happened like off camera to the side. But either way, I just think that was a little bit of it's just one of those things you have to suspend belief on. So
even with two killers simultaneously plotting and doing things, there are just certain things where it's like, that's not how this could work.
Yep.
Right.
We later see Randy at the video store putting away videos. He's Stu shows up. They're talking, kind of joking around. Interesting fact, supposedly, maybe I shouldn't say fact, interesting rumor / legend in my hometown of Battle Creek, Michigan. Supposedly that girl that asks, hey, what's that movie with, E.T.'s mom in it? The Howling. Supposedly that girl won that role in a contest, and she was from the rival school, one of our rival schools, Lakeview. I went to Arbor Creek. She went to Lakeview, supposedly. Yeah. Again, I don't know if that's true. I've heard that's true. I think a friend of mine did tell me that was true. I'll have to verify. But the thing that sucks is I couldn't find any news on that.
Yeah.
But anyway, Stu and Randy are sitting there casually talking. They see Billy randomly talking to two women. Now this is interesting too, because
my theory.
well, let me say what I was going to say first. It was interesting because, we see in Scream 5 that, obviously Sam is his daughter. He's obviously talking to other women aside from Sydney. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
And I often have wondered if it was the blonde in the bathroom that was her mom, but,
Yeah, that's one of the jokes / theories that I have, is that I wonder if in that moment Billy's talking to these two other women and one of them's going, by the way, I'm pregnant.
right. But I feel like this scene sort of reinforces the fact that it's both Billy and Stu for the killers, because when Randy, when he's like, the dad's a red herring, it's Billy, turns around and Billy's just right there in his face. You get the suspenseful music, and then you got Stu behind him,
putting his arm
now obviously
back.
we don't have a suspicion. Sorry, we don't have obviously we don't have a suspicion that there's two killers yet.
Right.
We can only see these things when you go back and watch it through a second time.
Right.
Billy, I do feel like in every single one of these Scream movies that have two killers, two killers, because obviously there's not a second killer in the third one, and there's 4 in the third in the sixth one. I said what I said. You don't suspect that it's 2. So at this point, in every Scream movie that has only 2, there's kind of always an obvious suspect, and then there's one you're like, oh, I didn't think that. This one is Billy, second one's Mickey, fourth one I would say maybe Roy Culkin's character, and then the fifth one,
I think that the Rory Culkin character is the more obvious.
Yes, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
And then fifth one, the obvious one is Richie, because it's the main girl's boyfriend. And then 6,
even though he did the least amount of work.
Yeah. 6 obviously had 4. So, yeah. But anyway, so then we cut to showing Principal Henry Winkler's character. We show him in his office. He hears some commotion. He goes out in the hall. I mean, it's like, hey, who's out here? Whatever. You see Wes Craven's fun little cameo dressed up as Freddy Krueger. Yeah. Would you call me? Not you, Fred. It's one of my favorite parts. But and then he goes back in and obviously is killed by the killer. So we then get to the party, the party that's happening at Stu's house, an iconic house. They use that obviously in the fifth one, the 2022 version.
There's one scene that happens in between this though that I think also kind of builds on the Sidney Prescott character, and it's her and Tatum having conversations while shopping and on her porch, and she's saying that she's a virgin, that she's not interested in it, that it kind of reads like she kind of pities Billy in a way, like she likes him, but like, oh, poor guy, he doesn't get sex, and I think that's telling again that our now final girl that we're suspecting and we're following more closely than anyone else is virginal, no drugs, no alcohol, things like that.
Yeah. Well, this scene also bothers me too. And again, I didn't take any points off of this because I felt like it was one of those things for the audience, but it really bothered me. The killer is in broad daylight in his suit. Like, you see a ghost face.
Just like Michael.
In this, well, no, but not as bad. Not as bad. He's in a car at least driving by.
No, the one scene where they're walking, Michael's standing right there. Now, only Lori sees it.
Right. But I guess there's not very many people around for that. And plus, nobody's really died yet except for.
But all these kids are pranking, right? So you probably do have people running around.
Sure. I guess
funny.
The one that bothered me the most, I can understand the one where he's in the yard and you see him kind of in the back of the trees. That one is only a little bit bothersome because obviously he's in black and there's green, vegetation around him. So it's like, dude, we could see you. Yeah. But that was supposed to be more for a background. But the one that really bothers me is in the small store. You can see his reflection in the. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And how do you get away with that?
And Dewey's supposed to be there, like, escorting them to keep them safe. And the sheriff and the deputy are, like, out front having a cigarette, having an ice cream cone, and the girls are shopping, and he's right there.
Yep. So now we get to the scene of Stu's party. Mm-hmm. It's interesting that they even are able to have a party And what I think is more interesting, and I don't know if he's there because of, well, first of all, it's weird that Dewey would even allow them to go to the party, but he goes too.
Well, and he has escorted the girls to get alcohol because Stu even says earlier, like, you bring the beer, all right? Like, or you bring this, and they bring snacks and everything. But he goes in and he jokes with the guy like, you're underage, and then I'm just playing, ha 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 ha.
Right.
You're the deputy, dude.
Yeah, you are the deputy. How are you allowing this?
Yeah.
And, I think, and I get,
are you small town? But
right. And I guess, you could argue that he's kind of like he's not undercover because he's wearing his full uniform.
I think it's he's the epitome of he was the dorky kid.
Yeah.
And now he's got, influence and some power, but he doesn't want to be seen as the dorky kid. So it's like I'd rather you see me as the cool guy and break the rule a little bit.
Well, also he's trying to get with Gail, which we didn't really talk about, but obviously there's been, they've been flirting earlier in the film, and then now he's really trying to, kind of, she's there too, and you even see it, Stu's
24 for a whole year.
Yeah. Well, but then at the party you see that he shows up with with her, and Stu's, oh, we got the chicken top story here, Gail.
And Gail, and then this is something I questioned too, is, Gail does kind of do this little flirty with Dewey, but I think in this moment, and earlier, obviously, she's flirting and using her feminine wiles to get what she wants.
Yep.
And that is access to this party, getting a camera in, and getting it set up. I don't think at this exact moment she really sees Dewey in that light.
Yep.
I think that in the next couple of scenes is when she finally is like, he's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, because we do see outside that she's got Kenny the cameraman out there, and she sneaks into the party, puts the camera on onto the TV, and is spying on, which it's interesting that they didn't see it. I know they're drunk and watching the movie, but it's weird that they didn't see that camera. But again,
and this is 1996. It's not a tiny camera,
right?
It's a pretty big camera that she's able to slide into the entertainment center under their TV.
Yep. So we see at the party, they're watching the movies. Randy, she's saying, what are we gonna do? His friends start asking questions. Randy says, don't you know the rules? And so Randy then explains the rules of surviving a horror movie to Stu and the rest of the gang. Rule number 1, don't have sex. Rule number 2, you can never drink or do drugs. And obviously,
Rule number 1.
Yep. You never say, I'll be right back.
I'll be back.
Yeah. And then obviously we see Lillard saying, I'm going to get another beer. You want one? I'll be right back.
I think that that's another really cool, clever, creative way of getting some dark humor into this.
Yeah.
Because as horror fans, you're like, hey, he's just blatantly bringing out the rules. We all have known them.
Yep.
We've seen them in all of the reviews we've talked about. The final girl is got to be the virginal girl and all this stuff. But Randy is the one to just say, here's how you survive.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll, and I'll talk about that kind of later in my, whatever. But, so this party serves as a pivotal setting where the film's major events unfold. Randy provides the comic relief, listing the horror movie tropes, the rules, obviously, we just talked about, while Tatum goes to the garage for more beer. There she encounters
Stu's direction.
Yep, Stu's direction. So obviously he's leading her into death. There she encounters Ghostface. She thinks it's a joke, but she taunts him. Oh yeah.
What is this? Spit on my garage?
He right. Yeah.
Spit on your garage.
Yeah. And she's obviously, you can see her slowly, and like, oh my God,
and once again, who gets blamed? Randy.
Yeah.
You lose the costume, Randy's little flip.
Speaking of the costume, what I loved about this scene is, you really see that shine in the costume. I have one right behind me. So for a year, I know this is going to sound weird, but again, this is up there. This franchise is up there for me. I've wanted a Ghostface suit for years, and the version that they put out was garbage, and it's like it wasn't even close. It was just the regular kind of Halloween costume material. I couldn't ever bring myself to buy one. I got one of the masks. I missed the mask. So this is the weird part. So, the costume back then was garbage. but the mask they put out from Fun World was legit. I mean, it was thick rubber. It was awesome. Well, so then for the 25th anniversary, they put out a screen accurate suit, and I'm like, finally. So, and it's real cheap. You can get it for $75. I mean, there are people that have been making them for years for upwards of $500. But being able to get one finally, I was so excited. And then, when I went to New Zealand and everything, they were putting out the mannequins, the animatronics at Spirit Halloween. And, that's what what you see the ghost face here and the Art the Clown there. I was like, well, I wonder if I could get one of those. And because the standee came with that trash costume, the same one. So I tried to put it on it, and sure enough, it fit perfect. So I absolutely am just thrilled to have this behind me. So just a little kind of behind the curtain.
But it to give a nod to like the costume department and the props department, it's those kind of details that make this character kind of, I'd say, unattainable.
Yeah.
This isn't the, they have that at every five and dime in the States.
Yeah.
The call back to an earlier scene, that there is this like depth and attention to detail in this costume so that you can see that shine in it. And then when she's hitting him with the beer bottles and such, and the foam and the froth on it, it's awesomely fabricated.
Yeah. So after this, after Tatum is killed, which she gets killed by, she tries to get out through the garage door, which I thought was interesting, the doggy door and the garage door. The killer goes inside, somehow. And it's interesting that happens, because I that had to have been Billy, maybe, right? Or because I know he goes out.
Yeah, I think that one's Billy.
But it's interesting because he goes
still in with a friend.
Yeah, but he goes inside, so he must take his costume off and then go to the front door, because everybody's leaving the party to go find Henry or whatever, and then he shows up, and sees Sydney or whatever. So, but then we cut to Gail and Dewey outside the party. They're out investigating. He said he finds something. He wants to go for a walk. Gail, after planning the hidden camera, Kenny's watching everything. Dewey and Gail investigate nearby.
Wasn't it that there was a report of a car?
Yeah.
He knew he was looking for a car.
Yep.
That there was a report of a car, and so he said, "You want to take a walk with me?" And I think that it's in that scene, in that walk, that she kind of is like, "Okay, maybe maybe he's a nice guy."
Yep. So they flirt and everything, and then all of a sudden, Dewey shows up and finds Neil Prescott's car. So now it is kind of more leaning toward maybe he's the killer, her dad. And her dad is so absent from this franchise. I think he has 3 scenes total in this entire franchise. They keep talking about all these characters coming back for these. I really wish they would give him justice and bring him back somehow. Make him a killer. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, just do something with him.
He can be grandpa and in a scene of
That
some
too.
kind.
Yeah, I guess he would be kind of fairly, no offense to the actor, but he probably would be pretty old by now. So I don't think he'd be. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
poor guy, his wife's cheated on him.
Right.
Gets murdered because she cheated on him, and then is that what we will find out happens later to him and his daughter. He's been through a lot.
Yep. So we then see upstairs. We see Sydney and Billy. They're talking about everything. Billy's saying, I wish, they're trying to work things out. Billy's like, this isn't a movie. This is real life. Or no, she's saying this isn't a movie. It's real life. And
because again, he's referencing how things are like a movie.
Yeah.
And so she's saying, well, it's not. This is my life.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that I get frustrated with Sydney in this scene.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for her that this is the way that her first experience is with this particular human being. Then I also just kind of feel sorry for her as well, and frustrated with her that it is like a pity. Like, she feels obligated, right? Oh, I'm his girlfriend. No wonder, she says earlier, I'm sexually anorexic. Girlfriend, you have every right to wait till when you want to wait. You can tell him no as long as you want to. But it seems like she was kind of pressured from kind of society norms and pressured by Billy. I just feel sorry that that's the way that she lost her virginity.
Yep. But I mean, it's, so yeah, but she's also the one that initiates it.
Yeah.
She
But I think
says
she feels like she has to.
maybe, but you also kind of see in her face that she is like, all right, let's do this. She's like, because she kind of, I think she realizes like, maybe I have to live life more, and I've been such a conservative, which this is, I think, a difference between like, or from like Laurie Strode, where it's like, or, Alice from Friday. It's like, she has to, she feels it's the 90s, teens are doing it. Tatum and Stu have done it.
Right.
Why not? So I think she goes for it. So I could see what you're saying, but potentially. So, after they're done, she is talking to Billy. She thinks it's interesting. He could have used the one phone call to call her while he was in jail.
Why didn't you think of that 5 minutes earlier?
Well, but also, like, it's also an unrealistic thought, because they would have taken everything from him, including a voice changer. She doesn't necessarily know it's a voice changer at the time, but it's the same voice that calls her. So I really think her saying that is almost unnecessary. But it kind of leads into the next scene where they're sitting there and Ghostface appears. And again, we don't know it's two killers yet. So it's like, oh, maybe Billy isn't the killer. He's just your creep. So Ghostface attacks Sydney again. He's chasing her throughout the house and through the yard.
He kills Billy, right?
Well, yeah, supposedly.
We believe he kills Billy.
Yep, he kills him. And then Ghostface attacks Sydney again. Like I said, leading chaos throughout the sequence. They're running all throughout the yard and the house. She goes to find Kenny at the barn. There's a 30-second delay in the camera. He looks, and Ghostface slices his throat. Sydney is then she arrives back toward the house after the killer was, taunting her in the van and in the car. We see, he's trying to get into that little Ford Escort or whatever that was.
I love that scene.
Yeah.
That scene where she doesn't have access to a phone to call 911. And we already know that, she's done the AOL 911, but that's not available now either. And each time that she's tried to get away, he's been able to chase her. So she goes into a police car and tries to lock the doors.
Yep.
And this is the old school, they're not.
Yeah, so
they're the push down locks and everything. And she tries to get on the radio to get help. And
I think she does get help because the cops come.
Yes.
At this point.
She does get, she tells them the address. She says, I'm being attacked. I think she gets through to them. It's kudos to her. She's very resourceful when it's that like fight or flight.
Yep.
She's smart. She gets it done. But this is when we get that creepy scene. Well, first he taps on the window with the bloody knife.
Dangles
the keys.
But also first, he stabs Dewey in the house. She runs up. She's screaming for Dewey. Dewey, where are you?
Yep.
Runs up to the house.
So we already know that the one police officer that she knows is there is not able to help her.
We assume he's dead as well because he's got the knife in his back and falls.
He's pretty bloody.
Yep.
Yeah, and then so we get this, tap, tap, tap and dangling the keys. And then as she's on the radio, you see the back hatch start to raise.
Yep.
And it's one of those great, I love when horror movies do this, where the audience knows something's going on and the main character or the person that's being, hunted, doesn't know that it's happening right behind them.
Yeah.
That creepy feeling of, girl, turn around. I loved this scene.
Yep. Well, so Sydney finally arrives back at the house. She is then greeted by screaming Stu and Randy. Now this is something that I think was interesting.
Way going.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting because it makes me wonder why Randy thinks automatically that Stu's the killer, because
and he's hurt. Randy's
I guess
something's happened to his leg. We don't really get a full
view of that, and that seemed like a scene that should have been in there.
Yeah.
Because he's assuming that Stu's the killer now. It's like, well, where did that come from? He wasn't a suspect. I mean, obviously everyone's a suspect, but the two obvious suspects at this point, number one being Neil Prescott, but two, Billy still, even though he's dead, like upstairs, we think.
It's again one of those moments where even though there's two of them,
yep,
which one was truly doing what? Because if Randy's been attacked and we see earlier before Kenny's throat is slashed, we see that Ghostface is behind Randy while Randy is finishing the movie. But we don't see Randy actually attacked. We see Ghostface then back up and go after Kenny. Now, when they're coming and running up, someone has been playing cat and mouse with Sydney in the cop car.
Yep.
But here is Stu without the robe on.
Yeah, that's odd too.
Yelling with Randy out in the front of the porch
Because
area.
Billy's
then
still
Billy's
upstairs.
upstairs.
So maybe
So
Randy came back to the house and found.
Well, my thought was, yeah, if Randy was possibly somewhat attacked, maybe it's, again, he's not a main target in their mind, possibly.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a hurt him, have him run away, get out of our way and let us do what we want to do.
Right.
Possibly, maybe Randy saw Stu taking off the robe after messing with Sydney in the cop car.
Yep.
That's my only assumption, is that had to be the way that this played out. Otherwise, it's like, how did this physically even happen?
It's almost like in Friday the 13th with Alice in the Jeep. You know,
Yes.
she throws the body through the window
And she's
and
driving.
all of a sudden she pulls up in the Jeep. It's just one of those things where you had to suspend belief because, and you know, we see in films and TV shows that there's big time jumps, even from episode to episode. Sometimes 6 weeks go by. You know, maybe moments pass where we don't see these things, and it just, you know, hey, we got to keep it to an hour and a half movie. So, but moving on, we see Sydney lock both Randy and Stu outside. Just as she's doing this,
As you both.
yeah. Just as this happens, Billy somehow is alive upstairs, coming down the stairs,
But obviously,
bloody shirt. Yes, very wounded, very hurt. And then he
takes
Sydney,
the gun from Sydney.
yes, Sydney was able to get one of the guns.
I think it was Dewey's.
She was able to get Dewey's gun. Yep,
Mhm.
and so he takes the gun from her like he's going to protect her.
Mhm.
He opens the door. Randy, for some reason, is the only one that comes in, but we find out seconds later. You know, he says Stu flipped out. He's gone mad.
Yeah. Which again, Stu didn't kill Randy. He took off of some kind of, I've got to do, fulfill this different plan. So obviously they think that Randy's not.
Yeah, I could imagine that maybe Stu just ran around the house or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, so Billy takes a shot at Randy, shoots him in the
Shoulder.
the right shoulder. You know, because it seems like he would have either gotten a headshot or.
This franchise like shoulder wounds.
Yeah. So it is revealed that Billy is the first killer. Scared and afraid, Sydney realizes that this is happening. She goes to run, and what happens? She runs.
He quotes Hannibal Lecter as well. So we're getting that, like, ooh, he's a movie
Nope.
buff too.
Anthony Perkins, Psycho.
Psycho. I'm sorry.
Yep. She runs away from Billy, and only to run into Stu, thinking she's safe and Stu will help her. He lifts the voice changer to his mouth and says, "Surprise, Sydney." I love that.
And that is when we are let in on that there isn't just one.
There's two.
There is two.
Yep. We then see that
We also needed to state that there's the line that Billy, when he like licks the blood off of his own finger,
oh yes,
and he says it's corn syrup, just with like the blood they used in Carrie.
yep. So when he stabbed him, obviously,
Never been hurt.
and it was weird because when you go back and watch that scene again, it does he is stabbing him very odd. It's like he's not stabbing him at all. It's like he's slitting it open. Like
It's splattering the blood, right?
no, he's obviously got under his shirt. He's got some kind of
Yeah.
thing because he's not just splattering on it. It would look like this, but you could tell the way that the killer was cutting. He was like cutting to the side, almost like he was ripping it open with the knife this way
Right.
to make it look like it. So they probably rehearsed it at some point. But anyway, it is revealed that they have her father tied up in the closet, and the killers in the kitchen reveal their plan to frame Sydney's father for the murders and their twisted motive. Billy wants revenge on Sydney because her mother's affair caused his parents to divorce.
And the look in Stu's face to me is that he didn't know.
Yep.
He looks at Billy like, this isn't the motive that we talked about.
Right.
He was saying, this character and that character, they didn't have a motive. Why did this person like to eat humans? We didn't know that, we don't need a motive, right? And then Billy just drops this bombshell of, actually, the woman that I've been dating, I hate.
Yep.
And you could just see it in Stu. And I want to give props to Matthew Lillard there, because the acting of just that, like,
Yep.
great. And it's all just this facial way of expressing that he didn't know, and oh crap, Billy's my best friend. I think he should have told me this.
Yep. The duo plans to make themselves appear as the survivors of the massacre by injuring each other, but they underestimate Sydney's resilience.
And obviously, Billy wanted to be the sole survivor.
Potentially.
I think so.
I don't, because he didn't. He stabs him, but I honestly think in that scene when they're kind of making each other wounded, I think he is angry with Stu that I don't know. You could be right, but
in my opinion, they talk about just like we talked about, right? Low and shallow, but Billy doesn't do that. He immediately 3 times, I think.
Something, yeah.
I think he stabs him 3 times. Not what they've planned. And again, you see this Billy, this isn't what we talked about.
Yeah.
I think that in Billy's mind, he was using Stu to help him get his plan,
we see,
and then he doesn't want him to be alive anymore.
And you're right, because Screen 3 actually backs that up. Roman was talking about how he teases him. In part of his monologue, he says, have someone to, have a partner to sell out in case you get caught, find someone to frame. It's like he was making a movie. That's a direct quote from the film.
Yeah.
The duo then plan to take care of Sydney once and for all when Stu goes to reach for the gun, and it's not there. We see that Gail has the gun, and she goes to fire the gun, but she leaves the safety on, and Billy kicks her unconscious as she lands on top of Dewey. Just then, they turn to find Sydney. They don't find Sydney. Sydney turns the tables on the killers, using their tactics against them. She dons the ghost face mask to disorient them, gives them a call, says that she's called the police as they are on their way. So I guess I'd forgotten about that. So she didn't get all of them on the radio. She called them while they were messing with Gail.
Well, okay, yeah. I think it's a suspend belief here because it happens so quickly.
Yep.
I think that she truly got through on the radio.
Maybe.
Still, I think that just in that amount of time when Gail is, trying to fire the gun and both the killers are focused on her and walking away, I don't think that Sydney had enough time. I think it's a ruse that she's telling them that she called the cops, maybe knowing that she was on the radio.
Potentially, but she had the phone to call them, so it's possible.
She did.
Just as...
Could you text back then? Could she have texted?
I don't know. Probably not.
It's again one of those that would have happened in a very short amount of time.
Yep. At this point, Sydney is able to. She's fighting Stu. She stabs Billy with the umbrella, thinking that he's dead. So she goes and fights Stu in the living room. Drops
She's got full robe on, the mask.
Yeah, got the robe on, everything. You see Stu running at her and going to attack her. She's able to maneuver, and she's able to drop a TV on his head.
I always had a thing for you, Sid.
Yep. Just then, they think everything's okay. Dad stands up. Everything's fine. Randy's still alive after being shot. Then Billy pops up again, punches Randy in the face, and he gets shot by Gail. Gail is, of course, alive. They didn't kill her. They just pushed her down and knocked her unconscious.
And in the fight, Sydney pushes her finger into the wound that she made in Billy's shoulder, I think, with the umbrella. So again, another shoulder wound.
Yep.
But I think that's such a kind of, I say cringe, but not in the sense of cringing, the terminology we use now, but cringing of just ooh, yep, that would hurt.
To wrap up the final scare, Randy says, because he's shot by Gail, Randy, says, be careful. This is when the killer comes back for one final scare. Just then, Billy does pop up from the ground saying boo. And Sydney takes a shot right to the head, says, not in my movie. And both killers have been killed. The morning after, Sydney, Dewey, and Gail survive the night. We see Dewey being taken away on a gurney or a stretcher. Sorry, I don't know. Gail returns to her duties, covering the news events and saying that it will be a night that no one will ever forget.
And to me, poor Kenny, it's kind of saying see, look, you're not important to your job. They'll have your job filled before your obit comes out, because this is the very next morning and Gail already has the substitute camera person out there helping her.
A couple of things that I noted about the film before we get into the interesting things to note. I think it's interesting in the beginning that Casey says she likes the original Nightmare on Elm Street, but says the rest suck. It's funny because Wes wrote all of them. I believe he directed all of them except for obviously the reboot. And a lot of people, including myself, praised the third film. So does this mean that Wes Craven was just poking fun at himself? Possibly.
Stephen King likes to do that.
Yeah. The killer's voice evolves throughout the franchise as it goes on. It takes a bit of a dip in the second one. It's a little inconsistent, and we'll talk more about that when we review it. But we hear we hear the killer talk for the first time. When Sydney's on the phone, and my pleasure. But then when we see the killer reveal, it's very muffled, very right here, like I don't know, it's very odd.
It has always been odd to me about how it's so clear on the phone when you're like doing this under a mask.
Yep.
You would think, or if they're doing it over the mask.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in this is a note that I made. In films 3 through 6, it's almost like the killer is emulating how the actor naturally speaks. It makes me wonder if they meet and talk prior to filming about this. It's interesting, but the other thing about the killer I thought was interesting was at times when the killer gets hit by either by the person he's attacking or a bystander, when he grunts, it sounds like the actor's voice making that sound of, like it sounded like Stu. Or
like at the very beginning with Casey, where he finds out that the phone's still on, and you hear the hey.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
the hoy, yeah. I thought this part was interesting too. Dewey and Tatum's mom, when they're after the
Sydney, you got a phone call.
Yeah. Dewey and Tatum's mom answers the phone when the killer calls. She answers it very casually. She didn't ask who it was. You'd think that Dewey would have warned her, or even Sydney.
Just attacked.
Yeah, Sydney, that she had spoken with the killer over the phone prior to this. But instead, she just gives the phone to Sydney. This is a point where you have to say, because plotter suspended disbelief, but I just thought it was her.
And Sydney even asks, is it my dad?
Right. I don't think so. So it's like, why would someone call Tatum's house for? How does she know? How does the killer, or how does anybody know that she's staying with Tatum?
Yeah.
That kind of bothers me. If it's somebody from the police station, you'd think they want to talk to Dewey first or something.
Well, and again, Dewey's our comic relief there with the phone.
Yeah.
I do really like that.
Yeah. The biggest thing that I want to say about Scream, and this is what I love about this franchise. And it's kind of like you could almost draw a diagram on this, but what I love about Scream the most is it's a full 4-dimensional 360-degree story. It's a film in of itself, while loosely being based on a true story. It's a film that becomes its own franchise, spawning 6 sequels. It has a movie within a movie, Stab, and that movie gets
book within the movies too.
Yeah, the book. I didn't even think about that.
There's multiple books, actually.
Multiple books. But Stab then gets its own franchise. They have 8 films. As of Scream 2022, they had made 8. We see that in that film. It's a commentary on real life horror films. They always talk about, Michael, Jason, Freddy. They're constantly mentioning all these other IPs. It also has its own real life parody film, like, Scary Movie. And that movie has spawned its own franchise. With 5, and we're going to get a 6th Scary Movie in 2026. So
with the Wayans brothers,
right?
Back.
Yeah, coming back.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that it has just you got this one movie and it has spawned all of these different things. It's like the center with right. While it loosely being based on a true story, which we'll talk about.
I did have one more question before you got there.
What's that?
So we talk about how much Scream 3 kind of loops back to Scream 1.
Yeah.
With Roman and him like training Billy and Stu. So I was wondering about that. You don't know this obviously with your first watch on Scream, but if you've seen the franchise and you're going back through, this is a theory I have. And I'm wondering, we talked several times about the physics of this, the physical, how could they have been here and done this and yada, yada. Do you think that Roman was at all in the actual robe and mask helping Billy and Stu during Scream 1?
I do honestly wonder that and think that.
Yeah.
And with the news of both Billy and sorry, and with Matthew Lillard coming back and
Roman.
Scott coming back, I think it would be really, really cool to see that because, and I don't think that they would have to age them down that much. I think, Scott Foley's going to have to shave. He does have a little bit of that, the beard now.
Well, and like we talked about, we're in the, we've got AI technology, like
yeah.
what they've done with Paul Walker.
Oh, yeah.
Post
Pirates 5, we see a young Jack Sparrow.
They could very easily possibly do something to loop back to show, oh, that's how there was one messing with her in the car and Stu's doesn't have a robe on and Billy's up there. Maybe who was messing with her at the car was actually Roman.
Right. It could be. If that's the case, I honestly, I think they should do that because, like I said in a previous episode, Kevin Williamson is a good sport for not completely ignoring the Roman story like 5 and 6 did. They don't acknowledge him at all.
Right.
Let me take that back. 6 did because they're talking about the different killers throughout it.
Right.
But 5, they really specifically leave him out.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that Kevin is doing that and is bringing them in somehow, I really do hope we get to see kind of some backstory with that. Maybe, kind of like in the Santa Claus 3, where we kind of see the side angle when Jack Frost has Scott Calvin and like, this is what your life could have been or whatever, so if they show that, if they bring that stuff in, I think that would be really cool to see.
So too.
Yeah. All right. So again, moving on to the interesting things of note, and this kind of goes based on what I was talking about. This was art imitating life. The inspiration for the screenplay came to Kevin Williamson one night when he was watching a documentary on serial killer Danny Harold Rolling. Rolling killed 5 students after sneaking into their apartments. Later that night, Williamson found an open window in his house that he was certain was shut before. He spent the rest of the night searching the house, terrified with a knife in hand, talking to a friend on the phone. He wrote the first draft of the script and a treatment for 2 sequels over the next 3 days. So I did forget to mention this. Our interesting things of note that we find online, we do research online what we can find. We're hoping it's true, but we do. This is little tidbits that we find online that, we thought we find interesting.
One of the interesting things that I do know of is that the writer actually was actively watching a lockdown from the University of Florida for the attacks that were happening there when he was actually writing the script for this movie. And just that spawned creativity of, the lockdown of the high school and the putting in the curfew. And, they quote, the town that dreaded sundown.
Yep.
All of these things he kind of drew from and got inspiration from.
Yeah. The script sparked a bidding war. The screenplay generated a lot of heat in Hollywood. Paramount, Universal, Morgan Creek, Oliver Stone's Synergy Pictures, and the Weinstein's Dimension Films all put bids in for it. Williamson ultimately went with Dimension, who paid $400,000. This was less than what some of the other companies offered, but he thought the film had more of a chance of being made. It was originally actually titled Scary Movie, but Harvey and Bob Weinstein didn't like it and suggested Scream instead. They had just seen the music video for Michael and Janet Jackson's duet on the same name and loved its simplicity. Wes Craven was hard to convince. He was the studio's choice to direct Scream, but having made horror movies his bread and butter, Craven wanted to take a break from the genre. He declined the job on 2 different occasions. George A. Romero, Sam Raimi, Robert Rodriguez, and Danny Boyle were on the shortlist to direct, but were all discounted because they saw the film as a comedy. Craven was still the studio's choice because of his approach to horror. He said you can't be funny when someone's dying. Instead, he looked for humor in the tension between death scenes. Craven was eventually tempted to do the project for 2 reasons. One was that Drew Barrymore was signed on to do the film, and the other that it was a chance to do an encounter with an 11-year-old who told him that The Hills Have Eyes was his favorite movie, and that he thought that Craven had gone soft in recent years. It's interesting that he would think that because it's one of those things where I look at it as if it ain't broke, don't fix it or whatever. If that's your genre, if that's your thing, again, if that's what you just said, if that's your bread and butter, if it's what's, you can still be creative with horror. I think that horror is just now getting to be what it is, like mainstream. Obviously we see that with The Substance being nominated for an Academy Award and only having 6 other films nominated there. and with how big conventions are getting with horror now, there's so many horror conventions that have popped up. There's so many mainstream conventions that are pop culture that are bringing in horror films like or horror actors like Scream. There's so many pop culture cons that have Scream actors on their guest list. So it's interesting to me in this day and age that he would even feel that way.
Well, I think that, looking through the lens of during 2025, it's much more socially acceptable nowadays to say that you're a horror fan.
Yeah.
I think, in years past, you had things like the Satanic Panic of the 80s and things like that, where if you were to say, oh, I really loved watching that horror movie, I could watch it over and over again, you'd kind of get the side eye of just like, what kind of freak are you,
Yeah.
But now I have attorneys that I work for that are like, man, I love horror and I'm reading this horror graphic novel and, oh, I've been to that horror convention and these are, professional, successful people that you're like, cool, that's awesome. I didn't realize that.
Well, and I'll even say for my own personal life, for those who know me and for, obviously you have been in my life, Power Rangers was a huge part in my life. And I still have seen that segregation because Power Rangers and horror are two big different things, two major different things. And, when I said that I wanted to make horror more of my main focus now that Power Rangers is done, people are like, well, I guess we'll miss you. Or,
right.
I've heard people say to me like, well, you can go have your horror. I guess we'll still do this or that. And I almost took offense to it because I'm like, I can't have both. I can't be. I can't be a fan of both.
Yeah.
And that I'm not throwing shade at anybody out there. I don't want anybody to think that. And I have appreciated the support from everybody who is wanted us to do this channel. But at the same time, it's like, you can be a fan of multiple things. And I'm just kind of saying that, there's a little bit more of a shift for us and for me because, the Power Ranger thing was in our relationship was kind of my thing. And I wanted it to be more about us. And I wanted to put our marriage first and everything. So I'm not ashamed to say that, and, there are quite a few Power Ranger fans like myself who love horror as well. I love Ninja Turtles. I love Smallville. I love, the other things, horror is just kind of my number one. And I don't think that's a problem to say, and I think that the more, the longer we live and the more pop culture learns to accept horror and that, we're all just sick freaks, acceptable sick freaks that, we'll see more of that in the mainstream.
Well, and not to go into a tangent on it, but I think that the other aspect that I've seen a lot is, we're Christian. We were raised in the church.
Yep.
We have a lot of Christian friends out there and they want to support us, but they're like, I don't do horror.
Yeah.
I don't touch it. I don't want to be around it. And that's fine. That's your preference. Again, we're here. We respect and love everyone of every culture, every, thought, every religion. But
Yeah.
it doesn't, to me, through my eyes, they don't have to be polar opposites.
Right. And obviously we're Christians who don't hate or,
No.
we love everybody. And,
Yeah.
we're those Christians that say, man, I wish Christians weren't assholes. That's us,
Right. Right. Well, and I remember, I youth group through high school and everything. I had the youth group that no one really from my high school went to the youth group to the church that I went.
Yeah.
And then my friends in church were all the goth kids.
Oh yeah.
And I, I would get kind of poked fun at because they would all be in black and I'd be like in a gray hoodie or something like, and they're like, you can always pick out Katie. She's in the sea of black and she's not wearing all the black percent.
Yep.
But I don't know how many different times things went on in my life that I said, my goth friends, the ones that love horror,
Yeah.
are so much nicer
Yeah.
and show more of a spirit of Christ than the people professing being
Sure.
Christian. So anyway, just to say there can be dichotomy. You can like, this genre and that genre. You can be a Christian and a loving and like we've said before, some of the best people we've ever met were at horror conventions.
Absolutely.
Biggest hearts.
Well, and I think we as a society these days, we are so focused on putting somebody in a box that, oh, if you're a Christian, that must mean you vote for this and support
Yep.
that. And it's like, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, I really think it's a bigoted thing to put people in boxes that they just think, oh, well, you must think this if you believe that and that. And it's like, not necessarily.
Right.
But I know we're kind of getting off on a little bit there, but, and we'll kind of bring it back, but that's all this to say is, don't put people in boxes because you never know what they've been through. You never know what they like. Yeah. So
And you can like more than one thing.
absolutely. Another interesting thing of note is Wes Craven wanted Drew Barrymore to play the part of Sydney.
Yeah, I told you about that.
Yeah, Drew was originally signed on as the lead character in the film, but she thought it would have more impact if she played Casey Becker instead.
She actually was adamant that she was the person to be killed
Yep.
first.
She said that her biggest pet peeve was that I always knew the main character was going to be sludging through at the end. Obviously she knows this with being in Firestarter and such.
Well, and Neve Campbell, she also did The Craft the same year. She's kind of rising to fame. She's Party of Five and everything. You could arguably say that the biggest, young actor on that cast is Drew Barrymore.
Yep.
And in fact, you look at the movie poster, she's one of the main top front figures that they use. So aside from it being a creepy factor of her first death, it was a way of Drew Barrymore saying, "This, I want to be the first death.
Yeah.
I want to be the start of what this can be, and then I want to kind of pass the torch to someone else." I think that's awesome. I saw some behind the scenes video footage of her actually being very involved in giving a lot of input in how she's stabbed while she's running and how she's dragged, and kudos to her. I think that's amazing.
Yep. She wanted to do it as to take the comfort zone away. So we would establish that the rule does not apply to this film. Taking influence from what Hitchcock did with Janet Leigh in Psycho, Craven eventually came around to the idea. He said the fact that we killed America's sweetheart at the end of just 15 minutes of the film, it was like a body punch to the audience. The authorities got involved for Barrymore's scenes. During the filming of the opening scene, Drew Barrymore was given a live landline as a prop. She got caught up in the scene and accidentally dialed 911. They were alarmed by her screams and called back, concerned about her welfare. Craven said that Barrymore put an enormous amount of trust in him, as she told him about a story she had read in the paper about a dog being set on fire by its owner, which really upset her. She was uncontrollably crying when relaying that story to Craven. To generate a similar emotion in Barrymore's character, Craven would say to her, "I'm lighting the match," which triggered Barrymore. Much like in Halloween, the costume for Ghostface was decided on set. I thought this was interesting. In the screenplay, the costume was simply described as Ghost Mask Killer. Craven went through ideas and worked with the costume department, and nothing stuck. That is until they were location scouting a house for the end scene, and there was this mask for the producer. There was a mask that the producer Marion Madalena spotted. Craven loved it and negotiated a deal with Fun Mask, the company who produced it. Bob Weinstein wasn't so convinced and considered replacing Craven because of it. That was until he sent some dollies of the opening scene and he had a change of heart. Now, it's interesting because this next one kind of goes with that, and this is very noticeable to me. The mask in the opening scene is slightly different than the rest of the film. They hadn't gotten the rights to the actual Fun World mask at this point, and it was called the Peanut-Eyed Ghost. So the KNB effects made one similar, yet different enough to avoid legal action. Once they obtained the rights to the mask, they made it true to form, and it's seen throughout the rest of the film in the franchise. It's interesting because if you go back and look in the beginning, it's more of a wide face where like the eyes are kind of more like this, and like the mask is a little bit thinner here. You can tell that they use that same mask in the scene where Principal Henry is killed, and that he cuts up. And that I saw actually that went online. It was like a starting bid of like 15,000 euros or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and Lee Waddell, who was one of the stuntmen, he still wears that because he's the one that killed Drew Barrymore, the stuntman in that suit. He still has that mask, and he still has one of those masks and has it with him, I think, at conventions, or uses it for like photo ops. So, but you can tell later in the film when, like, say, Sydney's attacked for the first time, it's more of this. It's more of the narrow, like it's a little bit wider in the mouth, a little bit tight. So, Ghostface iconic voice was provided by Roger Jackson. who had also voiced Mojo Jojo in the animated television show Powerpuff Girls. He would go on to do the voice of Ghostface in all the sequels, like we said earlier. The actors never met him in the original because Craven thought the reactions would be genuine if they couldn't put a face to the voice. His dialogue was also not pre-recorded or looped in post-production. So he was there, actually interacting with the actors in the scene, sitting in a tent outside. The original plan was to have his voice as a placeholder and for it to be looped by another voice actor, but Craven stuck with him, describing his voice as intelligent and evil. Jackson didn't physically play Ghostface. That was a stuntman, obviously. There were a few moments where a stuntman didn't play Ghostface, and one of them happens in the scene where Casey smashes him in the face with the phone in the window. That was actually Wes Craven behind the mask. It is interesting because when you get to Scream 2022 and he's talking to Ortega's character, he's speaking in his normal voice when he's talking about her mom's boyfriend. Like, that's the closest you hear to Roger Jackson's voice. And then as he's talking to her, he goes in his lower register of the killer. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Scream is an homage to the classic clash of the late 70s and 80s. One of the homages is the dialogue between Casey's parents during that opening. Her dad says, "Take the car and drive down to the Mackenzies." And Halloween 1978, Laurie says, "Go down the street to the Mackenzie's house." This is very reminiscent of the opening scene of When a Stranger Calls in 79. The scene is filmed similar in length and has the classic lines, "The calls are coming from inside the house." Later in Halloween H2O, they pay a double homage to it as
send them to the Beckers.
Yeah, go down to the Beckers.
I want you to go down the street to the Mackenzie's house. I want you to tell them to call the police.
Get in the car. Drive down to the Mackenzies.
I want you to drive down the street to the Beckers. It's a mile down the road. Tell them to call an ambulance and get the police.
Which is weird. It's like, oh, go down, it's a school. Go down to this house. That's, just a house next to the school. Billy Loomis's name is a nod to Donald Pleasant's character.
All I gotta say to that is, don't live on that street.
Right. His last name is Loomis. Obviously there's Dr. Samuel Loomis. Joseph Whipp, he's, we talked about earlier, he's in Nightmare, and then he's here in Scream. Craven and director Sam Raimi had a friendly rivalry going throughout the careers. Started with The Hills Have Eyes. There's a torn photo of what looks like Jaws in one of the scenes. Raimi saw this and Craven saying, "Jaws isn't real horror, this is." Raimi returns the favor in Evil Dead with a torn picture of The Hills Have Eyes in the basement. So there's been this fun rivalry between them back and forth. When it came to casting Sydney, Drew Barrymore was out of the picture. With her being out of the picture, other actresses were considered, including Alicia Witt, who we later see in Urban Legend, Brittany Murphy, the late great Brittany Murphy, Melissa Joan Hart, could never see her in that role, Tori Spelling, who we funnily see as Sydney in Stab, but also in Scary Movie 2, and Reese Witherspoon. Molly Ringwald was Kevin Williamson's top choice, but she thought at 27 she might have been too old. So they ultimately landed on Neve Campbell for the role. Wes Craven said that he cast Skeet Ulrich in the role because Skeet reminded him of Johnny Depp. Craven famously discovered him giving him a role in A Nightmare on Elm Street. In one of his first scenes, Billy climbs through Sydney's window just like Glenn did with Nancy in Nightmare on Elm Street. Ulrich also said that he initially was approached for the film as a serious documentary about high school killers and didn't realize this was a horror film until the first day of shooting. Matthew Lillard was cast by a fluke. Lillard was the only one in the running for the film by accident. He was with his then girlfriend who was going to audition for something else. Lillard was spotted by a casting director and approached him and asked him to audition. However, he auditioned for the part of Billy and was told, "You're not the right guy to make out with Neve Campbell the entire time. Why don't you come back in for the best friend?" Ironically, Lillard and Campbell were a couple 2 years later, and after they met on the Scream set. Craven gave him the part because of his incredible ferocity. Rose McGowan was nailed in her scene when she dies in the garage. Rose McGowan was nailed to the garage door. The moment where Tatum gets crushed and the dog flap was tricky because of Rose McGowan's small frame. She was too small and kept falling out when the door went up. So they had to nail her clothes to the door to keep her in place. She has since used this knowledge to get through dog flaps when she's been locked out of her house. I used to do that in my house when I was actually small enough to fit through it. It's interesting because that door on that garage looked really small, even for her. It's interesting that they had to nail her down because she kept falling out of it. And she was actually the one doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The final scene was the longest shoot. It took the largest chunk of the film. It's 42 minutes in total to 21 consecutive nights to wrap. The cast and crew called it the longest night in horror history and had t-shirts made up of it. They say, "I survived scene 118. Kind of funny. The house in the final scene, the Mocker house, was available because the couple that owned it had recently died within a month of each other. Their children had no interest in it, so they were open to it being rented out for the film, which they've done in the recent past of using it as a B&B, which I thought was cool. Skeet Ulrich was injured on set. The moment where Sidney bursts out of the closet in the mask and the umbrella, Skeet Ulrich screams of pain. The ones that you see that he's like, those were genuine. He had open heart surgery as a child, and the second stab of the umbrella tip was missed. It missed the protective vest that he was wearing and hit him right in the sweet spot. There's one spot in his chest where there's stainless steel wire, and if you touch it, it's excruciating.
Poor guy.
Yeah, and they had him completely padded up for this, so when he gets stabbed by the collapsing umbrella, he'd be protected. And of course, the stunt woman, because the mask was so difficult to see through, stabs him right in the spot and missed the pad entirely. So it's a very real reaction.
I also know that the infamous "you hit me with the phone, Dick" was actually what Lillard truly said to Skeet, because he was supposed to throw the phone down, but the way that he threw it actually hit Matthew Lillard. And so that wasn't a scripted line, but it's one that I've quoted all. And I think that a lot of fans love that line, but you could say it was ad lib, or you could just say it was Lillard saying that to Skeet.
An iconic character almost didn't make the sequel. In shooting the scripts, the character of Dewey wasn't supposed to survive the film and the mayhem, but David Arquette's character was a big hit with the test audiences, so Craven brought him back in for reshoots where he is being rolled out of the house on the stretcher. Arquette did not know what take Craven used until he saw the film in the premiere. This is the one that I thought was the most interesting. It's honestly kind of sad, and it really frustrates me because of how legendary this is. Henry Winkler, he will be forever known. Obviously, he's playing the Fonz in Happy Days. But that notoriety, while it being a benefit in many ways, also turned out to be something of a handicap for the actor when the show ended around 1984. In his great new book, Being Henry, The Fonz and Beyond, which I'm sure it's not new by this point, Winkler remembers a particularly slight that came his way via Dimension Films. The studio behind Scream, when they were marketing the movie, Winkler had an extended cameo in the movie as the doomed Principal Arthur Himbry. He fondly recalls working on the film, which was a favor to his friend, director Wes Craven. He particularly enjoyed filming his death scene, in which he remembers that "I screamed louder than I ever believed any human could." He also says that the famous sequence where you see the reflection of Ghostface in his eyes took over 2 hours to get just right. And this was in the day before such a shot could be easily done with CGI. Yet, while he enjoyed working with Craven and on the film itself, he was thoroughly insulted when the studio declined to give him any sort of on-screen credit. As he recalls, they said, "We cannot put Henry's name on the movie. We cannot put Henry's picture on the poster. He is the Fonz. He will knock the balance of horror off." Winkler says Craven himself apologized for the slight, with it not being his call, but ironically, when they started testing the movie, audience members loved Winkler's role in it. As a result, despite his still lacking on-screen credit, they asked him to start promoting the movie, and which it opened poorly at the box office, but was a huge word-of-mouth hit. He said that while I extended the middle finger in privacy of my own home, he eventually agreed to it because he realized the publicity would benefit Craven as well as himself. Now he says that even his name isn't on the movie, which if it's not, if you go to IMDb, it literally says Henry Winkler uncredited. He says that if his name's not on the movie, he's forever associated with it in the minds of fans, and he loves signing Scream memorabilia at comic conventions. I gotta say that's bullshit. It's pure bullshit, because when you're saying, oh, you're just the Fonz, you're, again, we were just talking about this. You're putting somebody in a box. You're saying they can't do anything else other than comedy. Yeah. I personally, me, being born in '86, I didn't see Happy Days.
That's what I was gonna say. I don't know. I know that he played a character, Fonzie,
yeah,
on Happy Days. Never seen an episode in my life.
Same.
And to me, you say Henry Winkler, I think the principal in Scream.
Right. Well, moreover, Nev Campbell was in Party of Five. You could have said the same thing, or, oh, she's nothing but a romance actress. She should be in rom-coms, not scary movies. Fuck that. Seriously.
You could have said that about Drew Barrymore. No, you can't be the first
America's sweetheart.
to die. We want you to be the final girl. Right. Take it or leave it. Yeah, that's...
Why would you single out Henry Winkler? Not only, and people are so loose with the term cameo even these days. Watching Deadpool Wolverine, they sit there and they say Jennifer Garner and Channing Tatum and Wesley Snipes are, oh, the cameos. No, those aren't cameos. Those are roles. Same with Henry Winkler. He wasn't a cameo. He was a role.
I don't really know the specific distinction between.
A cameo is like a brief Hitchcock. When you see Hitchcock movies and Hitchcock walks by, that's a cameo.
Yeah.
Wolverine in
Wes Craven then, right?
That's a cameo.
Like a one-line thing.
Yeah, even Wolverine in X-Men, one of the X-Men, the origin ones, the whatever, First Class, when they find him in a bar and he's like, fuck off. That's a cameo.
Yeah.
That's a cameo.
Yeah.
But, I would not say that, not only would I say that it's not a cameo for Henry Winkler, he's the "and" guy, that special title in the credits. And, I would, if I were the one making this movie and I was crediting the movies, I would say with Drew Barrymore and Henry Winkler.
Right.
That's the credit I would give them.
Right. And you'd think after all these years that someone would eventually, how hard is it to put a credit on IMDb?
Exactly.
Come on.
It's on there and it just says uncredited, but still, it's like, get out of here.
Yeah. And to your point, he has multiple scenes.
Yep.
He has an epic death. He's then also mentioned again later on when they're like, hey, someone they killed Principal. He's hanging from the goalpost or whatever. We got to go see him. He's redundant throughout the movie. I think he's kind of a pivotal part of this origin story of Ghostface and everything. I think you should give credit where credit's due, and that's not being done.
Yep. And I've met him. I haven't gotten a photo with him or an autograph, and I'm planning to. But the thing I'm going to have him sign is something Scream. It's not going to be Click or Happy Days. It's Scream. That's what he's known for me.
Right. Right.
And I'm not discounting his other roles, but that was my favorite role of his.
Right.
Okay, so we have made it to the death count. How many people do you think died in this?
Casey. The principal is the next one, right? And then we have Tatum, Kenny. So 4?
Nope, you're forgetting some. So the death count was actually 7. The first kill of the movie is Stephen Orth in the chair, the Guffs.
Oh, there.
Casey Becker. Some say this was the coolest kill of the movie. Principal Hembry, so that's 3.
Yeah.
Tatum, Kenny, and then obviously Stu and Billy.
Oh. Yeah, I guess I didn't really. Yep.
So Katie, what was your favorite scene of this film?
I put down 3.
Okay.
Again, I'm part of this show. I'm allowed to have more than one. I'm help make the rules. I can bend them as well. So I put that Tatum fighting back with the beer bottles. Loved that. I love that it kind of shows her spunk and the way that she fights back. For her character, And then when you think about it, if it's possibly her own boyfriend, if that is Stu that's doing that, it's a cool scene
The couple that slays each other.
sometimes. And then the specific line, so maybe not the full scene, but the specific line when Gail is trying to drive the van and get the van away, and there's blood on the windshield, and she's trying to wipe it off, and then she does the windshield wipers, and there's blood streaking down, and then when she like makes the turn, and when Kenny falls, and she says something about, she's like, God, I'm sorry, but get off my fucking windshield.
Yeah.
Love that. So to me, that was like, that's not a full scene per se, but it's again the dark comedy, the dark humor, and then top of the top of the top of those three is the cat and mouse in the car.
Okay.
With the tapping and the keys and the hatch and all of that. I love the build up.
Yeah.
What about you?
I like the opener.
Really?
It was a tough match between that and the monologue because I'm a monologue guy.
Yeah.
But I love the opener. Just that phone conversation, the chase, the setup for the film. Chef's kiss, like just so good.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
In my opinion, so my favorite death, I think the best death is Tatum's death. How the killer taunts her and the back and forth. Her getting stuck in the garage door. It's entertainment. And again, with seeing how just the way the killer is standing over her in like the shiny suit, it's like, I'm about to fuck you up, like that type of thing. What was your favorite kill?
So I put down that Casey was my favorite kill.
Okay.
So I loved the setup, the building of it, the meanness, the evilness of a parent hearing their child,
Yeah,
and that happening to them. It adds to the creepiness of it, and then that movement of zooming in on her hanging from the tree, and then the slash and just scream.
Yep.
That I do love that. I put A++++.
Okay, so we have made it to the portion of our show where we are going to rate this film. You might be a little annoyed with us because I feel like, again, this is our first horror movie. This was, we might sound a little biased on this. But so if you haven't seen the show before, or listened to us before, a lot of people, when they're talking about, movies that they love, or they had just gone to see it and they're talking with their friends, they'll give it a letter grade. Or they'll rank it 1 through 10, or they'll rate it by stars. We here at The Couple That Slays Together like to do all three. So, Katie, why don't you kick it off? I don't think I've ever let you go first. So, what letter grade do you give this movie?
I'll say A.
Okay.
I would give it an A+ in that I enjoyed it. I love it. Again, probably biased. It's a first horror movie for me. There's nostalgia. I will say, like we've discussed, there's a couple of just like, there's no way that person could have been there and done that so quick. And there's just the tiny little bits of that I like to use the word distract, but it kind of pull you from being able to be fully in the world and suspend belief.
Yeah.
So my final grade is an A. What about you?
Well, I see what you're saying there, and I can see those points. And I'm not trying to let my bias get in the way of it, but I feel like those little points for me that I was bothered by, they didn't take away from it for me. So with that, I've got to give it an A+. And moreover, not because I love this movie so much, but just because of how 4-dimensional and just a 360-degree project this was, how much came into it and how much went into it and how much came out of it. I just feel like it's that perfect epicenter for horror. It's a commentary on horror. It's it's the peak of horror, in my opinion. Now, people might laugh at me and think I'm stupid for saying that. I don't care. It's our show. But so I give it an A+.
I wouldn't call it a peak, but I do agree with you that I think it has taken everything from earlier and made like an amalgamation.
Yeah.
And perfected what has come from before and made a new horror for that today's youth. The joking about the rules and things like that.
Yeah.
It was good.
When I say peak, I don't necessarily mean like horror hasn't been as good since. I don't mean it that way. I agree with what you said. Like you said, it takes from, it keeps the slasher franchise alive. It comments on other horror movies, but then it starts all these other great projects, The Faculty, Urban Legends, I Know What You Did Last Summer. It's just that 90s, it's very 90s while being timeless at the same time.
Right.
And for that reason, I also I rate this movie. I give it a 10. I know it's going to annoy people to think, oh, he just loves this movie because he loves it, but I'm going to give some of these movies a 10. Yeah,
Right.
I mean it's art, it's subjective, and because of that, I give it a 10. What do you rank it?
I give it a 9.5.
All right, that's still a good grade.
And once again, I had it kind of both circled, but I do this a lot in my notes, honestly, is I kind of put my thoughts as I'm having through the movie. And then as we're having this discussion and we're recording and rolling, I'm kind of going back through and kind of ranking in my mind. And I think a 9.5 is a fair where, yes, I'm still kind of biased.
Yeah.
But that you do, there are little, things that stand out. So.
And what do you give it for a stars rating?
I gave it a 4.75.
Okay.
Can I do that?
I guess.
Or can I do,
4.7, that's fine.
Okay. Then 4.75.
I'm going to have to figure out how to draw it, but I give it 5 stars. It's a 5-star
I
rating.
wouldn't be your wife if I didn't make more work.
Oh, sure. It's definitely a 5-star rating in my book. Well, hey, so not only do we rate our movies, by score, but we also give it another rating. We like to call our replay value rating. Replay value is huge in a matter of film and television. It's what you would do. It's for example, there will be movies that you just love, that they're a great story, awesome, but you don't necessarily need to see it again.
For God's sakes, he's going to talk about Birdman again.
No, but it's one of those movies where I saw it, I liked it, it was great, it was a masterpiece, don't ever need to see it again. But you've got those comfort movies. You've got your comfort movies that you can just throw on when you're, when you just need something to put on while you're trying to work, or when you're trying to get something done around the house, or if you want to just take a nap to it, and it's just something comfortable to listen to. So we give that scale that we say that you'll watch it repeatedly, you're likely to watch it again, neutral on it, you're unlikely to watch it again, or you'll never watch it again. So for my replay value ranking on this, I will have and always have watched it repeatedly. How about you?
Same.
Yep.
Same. It's definitely will watch repeatedly. It's something I found that I did myself as a single person before we were together.
Yep.
But then also being together, there's times where we're like, I don't know what to put on the TV. I don't know what we want to watch.
Yep.
And usually it's at least one of the Screams, but Scream 1, we've talked about this between us and some friends of like what we would rank all of the movies of Scream, right? And for me, Scream 1 is still the top. They're all great in their own fashion.
Yeah.
But with Scream 1, it's kind of my go-to of like, yeah, go ahead and that sounds fine. Put Scream 1 back on again.
Well, that about wraps it up. I know it's been a little bit of a longer episode, but hey, we love Scream, we love our Ghostface, so we just had a lot to say about this. We thank you so much for joining us. Feel free to reach out to us. Give us your thoughts. Leave a comment. Leave a kind and respectful comment. That's what we ask for. Everyone's welcome. Ghostface doesn't discriminate on who he kills, and we don't discriminate who listens to us or watches us. We'd love to have you.
For Randy.
When we're on, we are on social media. Obviously, if you're watching us on YouTube, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, Facebook. We have a Facebook group if you want to come chat with us. We're on Threads, we're on X, and we're on Bluesky. Now the only difference is, as you'll see, is on X, because of the character limit, we had to have Couple That Slays, but every other one of our handles is at the Couple That Slays. And I can't remember if I just mentioned this, but you can also email us at thecouplethatslays@gmail.com. We are also on all major podcast networks under The Couple That Slays Together. And we do have a Patreon that we're trying to get working on.
And I would love, personally, as a request, I'd love ideas on the Patreon.
Yeah.
I've kind of set up a few different ideas of what, if I was a fan, what I'd like to see or do or have. would love to hear more feedback on that.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, I want to make this, or we both want to make this something that you also enjoy.
Yep.
And we much appreciate, like, subscribe, share, word of mouth. All of that is, not monetary in any way, shape, or form. But if you do so feel inclined for Patreon,
Yeah.
we have tiers of all different levels already, but willing to work on that and add more to that. If you have ideas, please reach out.
Yep.
Specifically, you can, use the Gmail, email us, and we can go from there.
Yeah. Well, again, I think that about wraps it up. Again, I'm Brandon.
And I'm Katie, and this is The Couple That Slays Together. Until next time.
The couple that slays together.